My name is Ethan Miller, and until recently, I believed the worst betrayals only came from strangers, not from your own blood, not from your own brother. 3 weeks ago, I was standing at Pier 17 watching a white 38-foot catamaran gleam under the morning sun like a monument to my stupidity. My brother Chase Miller was leaning against the rail, sunglasses on, sipping something from a Yeti tumbler like he was living in a magazine ad. I stood there thinking, that's where all my money went. Every dollar I had spent over a decade saving, gone. The boat's name, ironically, was Easy Venture. 3 weeks earlier, Chase had shown up at my house with that smooth-talking confidence he always carried like a weapon. He had some big plan, he said. Fishing charter, weekend dolphin tours, sunset cruises. Tourists pay top dollar for this kind of thing, Ethan. All I need is a boat, and I've already got a guy who's selling one under value. It wasn't the first time Chase had pitched me on something, but this one felt different. Maybe because I was tired of always saying no, tired of always playing it safe. I work as a diesel mechanic, 6 days a week, mostly night shifts at a freight company that smells like oil and rust. I've been doing it for 12 years, and I'm good at it. Honest work, steady paycheck. I was 2 months away from finally buying out the small repair shop where I first started as an apprentice. That money, $84,000, was supposed to be the down payment. But Chase looked me in the eye and said, "This isn't just for me, it's for us, for the Miller name." That hit me harder than I expected. Our dad passed 2 years ago, lung cancer. The last thing he said to me was, "Look after your brother," and I had. Even when it was hard, even when Chase didn't deserve it. So I wired him the money. No contracts, no receipts, just trust. 3 weeks later, he wasn't answering my calls, wouldn't respond to texts. My gut twisted. But part of me still hoped maybe he was just setting things up, getting things going. I drove down to the marina that morning, unannounced, and there he was, laughing, with 2 guys I'd never seen before, barefoot on the deck of that brand new catamaran. "That mine?" I said from the dock, half joking, still trying to believe this was real. Chase looked down at me, tilted his sunglasses, and smirked. "Nah, bro, it's mine, all mine, thanks for the donation." My mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" He stepped down from the boat, took a swig from his drink, and said, "You really thought I was gonna let you be part of this? You fix engines, man. You don't run companies. Come on." I could feel my fists clench, my heart pounding in my ears. "You said it was for a business." He leaned in, grinning. "Business is booming. You'll never see a dime back." I stood still, and I smiled. "I know." He laughed, like it was a joke, like I was a joke. But in that moment, I wasn't angry. I was calm, ice cold, actually, because I'd seen something in the marina office just before walking over. A clipboard with the boat's registration. The name wasn't his. It wasn't ours. It was a shell company. And I knew then, this wasn't about a failed business deal. This was something else. And my brother, the same one who stole my money and laughed in my face, had no idea what I was about to do next. Chase had always been like this. Reckless, magnetic, impossible to pin down. Growing up, he was the one who made everyone laugh, the one who could crash a bike into a neighbor's mailbox and somehow talk the neighbor into apologizing for leaving it there. I was the older brother, but I often felt like the invisible one. Quiet, careful, the kind of kid who paid library fines on time and double-checked the locks before bed. Our parents saw us as 2 sides of the same coin. Chase was the storm, and I was the shelter. And for a long time, I believed it was my job to keep protecting him, even when he didn't deserve it. The pattern started young. In high school, Chase took my car without asking and wrecked it in a ditch outside town. My dad made him promise to pay for repairs. But when the bill came due, it was me who quietly emptied my savings to fix it. After all, he had football practice. College was work. He dropped out after 2 semesters and tried his hand at everything: flipping sneakers, crypto trading, freelance branding consulting, whatever sounded exciting in the moment. Every time it fell apart, he found a way to land on his feet, usually by stepping on someone else's, and every time he asked for help, I gave it. Not because I was gullible, but because I kept thinking maybe this time he'd grow up. After our dad passed, Mom leaned on me even harder. She was grieving and tired and didn't want to believe her youngest son had become the kind of man who could lie so easily. "It's just trying to figure things out," she'd say. "Your father would want you to be patient, but patience had its limits, and mine was wearing thin, especially now that Chase had stolen my future and laughed in my face while doing it. I started digging, not out of revenge, not yet, but because I needed answers. If he had really used that money to start a legitimate business, I wanted proof. If he hadn't, I needed to know what he was hiding. That's when I called Uncle Ray, my dad's older brother. He worked for Harbor Security and had spent 30 years in the Coast Guard before retiring. He wasn't close to Chase, but he knew boats and he knew people who paid attention to what docked where and when. I told him what happened and asked if he could help me check the boat's paperwork. He agreed without hesitation. "I always told your dad that boy would wind up in a mess," he muttered. "Let's see what kind of mess he's in now." We pulled records from the Marine Registry and traced the shell company Chase used. It didn't list him directly, but a P.O. box in Myrtle Beach was linked to a string of similar businesses that had dissolved within 6 months of forming. No tax IDs, no employee filings, no operational permits, just empty names on paper. The catamaran was registered under one of those companies. There was no license for commercial charter operations, no inspection reports, no verified dock agreements, and Chase certainly wasn't taking tourists on joyrides. Something else was happening on that boat. Uncle Ray said it best. "That thing's not built for fishing tours. It's built for speed. It's built for quiet drops offshore. You don't move tourists on a boat like that. You move product." That word, product, sat heavy in my chest. I started paying attention to the comings and goings at the dock, late-night visits, unfamiliar trucks, no brochures, no bookings. I brought my camera, took photos, logged times, license plate, and I called someone I hadn't seen in over a decade, Officer Dean, an old classmate who now worked with the local maritime police. We met at a diner near the wharf. I slid the photos across the table without saying a word. He stared for a long moment, then said quietly, "You didn't hear this from me, but yeah, we've had eyes on that vessel, and now we've got a reason to look harder." What Chase thought was a brilliant scheme was already catching attention, and he didn't know I was the one putting it all together behind the scenes. After years of looking the other way, I wasn't doing it anymore. I wasn't going to let him steal from me and walk away grinning. Not this time. This time, I was watching, and this time, he was going to pay for it. After my meeting with Officer Dean, everything shifted. I stopped thinking like a brother and started thinking like a man who had been robbed and humiliated. I knew Chase wasn't just being a selfish screw-up this time. He was playing with fire, and I was done pretending it didn't burn. Every night after work, I parked near the marina and watched from a distance. I'd sit with the engine off, camera ready, taking notes in a pocket notebook I kept in my glove compartment. There were no tourists, no fishing gear, no dolphin-watching couples with cameras and sunscreen. Just unmarked vans pulling up late, men in hoodies or ball caps carrying sealed crates on and off the boat, speaking in low voices and never lingering long. Whatever Chase had told me, and everyone else about his new eco-charter business, was a lie, and not just a petty scam. This was serious. Mom called around that time, asking if I'd talked to Chase. I lied and said he'd been busy. She missed him, said she felt like the family was drifting apart ever since Dad passed. I didn't have the heart to tell her that the drifting wasn't by accident. Chase was steering that ship away from all of us. She still believed he was just lost, a little reckless, but harmless. That was her weakness, always seeing the boy instead of the man he became. I told her I'd check in on him. She thanked me like she always did. I hung up and felt the guilt crawl up my spine, but I shoved it down. The truth was I was checking in, just not the way she imagined. I needed help understanding what I was really seeing, so I called Uncle Ray again. We met at his boat slip early one morning, just before the fog burned off. I showed him the photos I had taken and described the activity I'd been watching. He studied them quietly, then pointed to the shape of the crates. That's military grade. Not fishing equipment, too uniform, too tightly packed, either smuggling weapons, narcotics, or something expensive enough to move discreetly. I felt sick. This wasn't just my brother being an opportunist. This was federal time waiting to happen. Ray looked at me. "You ready to hand him over?" he asked. I hesitated. He was still my brother, but then I pictured Chase laughing in my face at the dock. The money I'd saved for a decade, the opportunity I lost, the family he kept lying to. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." Officer Dean called me 2 nights later. "You didn't hear it from me, but there's a big offload planned in about 10 days. We're setting up surveillance, but we need a little more time. You okay to sit tight?" I told him I could wait, but inside, I was already counting the hours. Chase was getting bolder, sloppier, more confident. The boat was docked less frequently now, sometimes gone for entire nights. One evening, I followed one of the trucks that came to load the boat. It led to a private warehouse outside town. I didn't go in, but I took codes, plate numbers, timestamp, every piece of information that might help seal the case. Meanwhile, Chase still hadn't called me. Not once. No apology. No explanation. Not even a fake update about the business. He was so sure he'd gotten away with it that I'd go home, lick my wounds, and move on. But what he didn't know, what he never seemed to understand, was that I'm not wired to explode. I don't scream. I don't throw punches. I wait. I collect. And when I move, I don't miss. The night before the planned bust, I drove past the dock one more time. The boat was there, dark and quiet. I walked by without stopping, hands in my pockets, heart calm. I looked at that sleek white catamaran, with its polished deck and empty name. It didn't belong to Chase anymore. Not really. It belonged to the truth, and tomorrow morning, the truth would finally catch up with him. It was just after 4:30 in the morning when my phone buzzed. One word. Now. That's all Officer Dean sent. I didn't need more. I was already dressed and out the door before the second vibration hit. The streets were still half asleep, dew settling on the rooftops. Charleston's harbor quiet and gray under the early light, but near Pier 17, the calm was an illusion. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest, careful not to draw attention. Black SUVs with federal plates were tucked along the side streets. Men in tactical gear stood like shadows near the docks. They weren't moving yet. They were waiting for a signal. From behind a row of stacked shipping containers, I could just see the boat. Easy Venture, sitting smug and spotless, like the crime it carried hadn't touched it. I saw movement on board. 3 men. One of them was Chase. He was laughing, barefoot as always, holding a paper coffee cup. He looked relaxed, like he'd beaten the system, like he'd pulled off his greatest trick. Watching him, I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt clarity, the kind that comes just before the storm hits. A low crackle in the radio, then everything happened at once. The agents moved in, swift and coordinated. No shouting at first, just presence, force, control. A spotlight from the harbor patrol boat cut through the morning fog. Then came the barking voices, the yelling, the hands raised in panic. Chase dropped his cup. He didn't run. He just stood there, frozen, disbelief painted across his face like a child caught stealing. I stayed in the shadows, didn't blink, didn't breathe. This was his moment, not mine. They zip-tied his wrists behind his back and walked him off the boat like a trophy catch. That's when he saw me. Our eyes met across the dock, him in cuffs, me in a plain gray hoodie. For a second, I thought he might scream or plead, but he just stared, mouth hanging open, trying to compute the betrayal. But it wasn't betrayal, it was accountability, something I owed him more than another bailout. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. They found over $2 million worth of illegal cargo on board, narcotics, unregistered firearms, and encrypted satellite comms, tucked into hidden compartments under the flooring. The operation wasn't just local. It tied into an ongoing federal investigation that had been circling the Charleston coast for months. Chase, in his arrogance, had stumbled into a much larger web. The agents thanked me for what I provided. One of them called me a key civilian contributor. I didn't care about the title. I just wanted my life back. By the time the sun was fully up, the boat was sealed off, the dock roped with crime scene tape, and my brother was sitting in the back of an unmarked SUV, head down, wrists bruised. I walked past the marina office and paused at the window, the same one where, weeks ago, I had seen the name of the shell company and known something wasn't right. I thought about all the times I had made excuses for Chase, all the money, the lies, the second chances. This wasn't justice by revenge, it was justice by removal. Removal of a parasite from a life I'd spent years trying to build, cleanly. On my way home, I stopped by a diner, ordered a black coffee, and stared out the window for an hour. I didn't feel victorious, just quiet, balanced. Like the ground under my feet was finally mine again. The truth had landed. And Chase was now exactly where he belonged, behind steel and under lock. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for walking away. 2 weeks after the raid, I stood in the driveway of the auto shop I used to dream about owning and watched as the old sign came down. Darby's Auto and Diesel had been there for 32 years, weathered by rain, time, and loyal customers. That morning, a new sign went up in its place. Miller's Auto and Diesel. Clean, simple, mine. The irony didn't escape me. I had once planned to buy this shop with the very money Chase stole. But in a strange way, losing it had cleared a path I wouldn't have walked otherwise. Miss Darby, the former owner, ended up offering me a better deal when he heard about what had happened. Said he respected how I handled myself. Said he'd rather see his name replaced by someone honest than someone rich. I thanked him, shook his hand, and signed the papers with a strange mix of gratitude and fatigue. It hadn't been easy getting here, but I was here now, on my own terms. Business was steady. I hired 2 part-time mechanics and a young apprentice from the community college who reminded me a little of myself at 20. Quiet, focused, good with his hands. On my lunch breaks, I'd sit in the back office, eat my sandwich, and sometimes glance at the small frame I had placed on the shelf. Inside it was Chase's last letter from prison. "You were always the quiet one," he wrote, "but I never thought you had it in you." He meant turning him in. But he had it backwards. What he never had in him was the strength to do the right thing, even when. I didn't frame the letter out of spite. I framed it because it reminded me of the line I'd finally drawn. The moment I stopped being someone who forgave blindly and started becoming someone who protected his own future. Mom took it hard when Chase was sentenced. 8 years, no parole. She asked me if there was anything I could do to reduce it. I told her the truth. I already had. Officer Dean said the information I gave helped Chase avoid much harsher charges. That didn't comfort her. For weeks, she called less, spoke shorter, said things like, "Families aren't meant to turn on each other." I didn't argue. I didn't need to. The truth was already working on her, whether she wanted to admit it or not. Eventually, she came by the shop with a container of baked ziti and a quiet apology. She didn't say much, just sat in the office, looked around, and nodded. "Your father would have been proud," she whispered, before leaving. I nodded back. That was enough. Some nights I still drive past the marina. The Easy Venture sits behind a chain-link fence now, impounded in collecting dust. Its once white paint, dulled by salt air and time. No one has claimed it. No one will. The name is still visible on the hull, but it looks different now. Not slick or smug, just sad, like a monument to wasted chances. I park across the street, sip a coffee, and stare at it for a while. Not with anger, not anymore, just reflection. That boat was supposed to be the future Chase promised. Turns out, it was just the lie he told best. One Sunday afternoon, I came home to find the front yard overrun with weeds. I hadn't touched the garden since everything went down. The old rosebush in the corner, the one Dad planted with me when I was 14, looked brittle and dying. For a second I thought about yanking it out, starting over, but something stopped me. I crouched down, dug through the weeds, cleared the base, and saw it. A single tight bloom, pushing out from a bed of thorns. It hadn't given up. Even when I had, I stood, went inside, filled a pitcher with water, and came back out to feed it. It felt like a small thing, but it was enough. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after Chase's arrest. There were still bills, still long hours under cars, grease under my nails, old customers who asked about my brother with awkward sympathy. But something had shifted, a weight lifted, a space reclaimed. I was no longer walking around with someone else's guilt strapped to my shoulders. I had made peace with my decision. And that peace didn't come from revenge or from court documents. It came from knowing I had chosen truth, even when it cost me something. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with sirens or courtrooms. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in the way the air feels different. When you no longer have to explain yourself, in the way you sleep better at night, knowing you stood up when it counted. Chase used to say I was too quiet to win, that the world only listened to the loud ones. But he was wrong. Quiet doesn't mean weak. It means watching. It means waiting. It means knowing when to move. The day I took down the last of the cardboard boxes at the shop, I found a note I had written to myself 5 years ago, a list of goals: own a shop, build a home, start over. I smiled reading it. I hadn't achieved them the way I thought I would. But sometimes, the road life gives you is better than the one you planned, as long as you're willing to walk it. And this time, I was walking alone, not behind Chase, not cleaning up his wreckage, just forward.